Hey, Right Riders, Keith Wheeler here, back with another video for you. And today we're going to be talking about dealing with an illustrator. And the truth is, it's not all rainbows and unicorn farts, okay? There are issues that arise, and what you really need to know, especially if you're just starting out and you're just starting dealing with an illustrator, or maybe even haven't even started finding one yet, you need to know the truth and know how to deal with issues that may arise. So that's what we're going to be covering in today's video. So if you're excited for this, make sure you give that thumbs up a smashy smashy. And with that, let's get started. So I don't really anticipate this being a super long video. I'm just going to tell you about an experience I've had. I've been dealing with illustrators for years, probably over almost a decade now that I've been dealing with illustrators for children's picture books and book covers in general, but specifically children's picture books. I was dealing with an illustrator that I've used on previous books, and it was actually a series that I have. And I'm just going to be honest, this time did not go super smooth. I actually first sent them the script in March of 2023. Right now I'm recording this in October of 2023, and we've just gotten to the book to the point where I'm going to publish it. I'm going to be publishing it pretty soon, and I'll put the cover up on the screen. The truth is, he's an amazing artist. He really is. And this isn't to bash this artist. This is to let you know ways that you can handle issues that may arise. An artist, he's a human, you know, he or she, they're human beings. They have issues, whether it's medical issues, maybe family issues, whatever. Things may arise. Sometimes people just don't feel well. Sometimes, it might be something that they're just not getting your vision. Okay. So some of the things that you can do to avoid issues or minimize your chances of issues in the future is to, one, be super, super clear on what your vision is for your book. You can give them the script, but the truth is, giving them the manuscript is telling them the words in there. But if you don't have specific details on what you want the characters to be wearing, what you want their expressions to be, or whatever, if you don't guide them in what you're looking for, then don't be surprised and don't be upset if what they come up with is not what you were envisioning. They're artists. So you want to give them some freedom to express themselves illustratively in your book, because children's picture books, the words are just part of what tells a story. The pictures tell the story too. And especially when kids are at the age where they can't read themselves, they can still see the pictures and see and imagine what's happening. So you want to make sure that you give that kind of leeway to your artist. But if there are certain specifics that you're wanting, you need to make sure that you're clear. So you want to make sure, number one, that you're clear on your expectations, on what you want, maybe what you don't want, and also important things like your timeline and, what your budget is, things like that. But when it comes to the illustrations, again, if you're not specific, you can't be upset with what you get back. Now, that said, some things that may happen is inconsistencies. You need to make sure when you're reviewing your illustrations, and usually when you deal with an illustrator, they will give you a rough sketch first, not colored in, just to make sure that you're both, again, on the same page, no pun intended, and they'll do like a line outline of what your book is going to look like. What, maybe just a couple pages to begin with, to make sure that they've got your main characters, the setting, and everything else looking the way you want. And then once you approve that, then you're going to move on to they'll add color to it, they'll add additional pages. So when you get that outline, when you get that lined drawing, make sure that you pay attention to the little things. It's very easy to look at the big picture, when you're looking at your characters and oh, this character looks right. They're wearing what I said they should be wearing. And this, background character, they look right too. The scene looks correct. But pay attention to the little things, especially when they give you multiple pages. Is there consistency in what they're wearing? Is there consistency in, is their shirt buttoned, have the same number of buttons on it? Are the same number of buttons buttoned or unbuttoned or whatever? Little things like that. Are their shoes tied or untied? Depending on the scene and depending on the story and how long that story takes place, little things like that can make a big difference. So one of the issues I ran into with this particular book was with consistency. And so like in some pages, the character had shoes on, in some pictures they didn't. And the truth is that's a big deal because this all takes place over basically one day, and really in a short period of time. And so it doesn't make sense for them to be wearing shoes sometimes and not wearing shoes other times, unless it's part of the story, unless you intentionally make it a point that she took her shoes off or whatever. So again, little things like that you need to pay attention to. Sometimes it's bigger things. You're paying attention to the little things and you don't notice that the bedspread is a completely different design or completely different shade of color. Now, slight shading could be good depending on maybe the color of the room. Maybe the light just came on or the light went off. Obviously, that's going to affect the color of items in the room. But are those things being affected the right amount? Did it go from pink to purple, or did it just go to a darker color or a lighter color depending on if the light was on or off? Maybe with the light, you're able to see lines a little bit better. Maybe there's lines down the blanket that you don't normally see, but when the light gets turned on in the room, they're more visible, whatever. Things like that can make sense. And you may just need to test it out at your own home and see how that looks. But what I'm talking about is sometimes you just miss obvious things. Like, it's a completely different color. It's pink and before, and now it's purple, just drastic thing. Maybe there was designs on it before, and after some, changes that were made and they had to redo the illustrations, they forget to include that. Little things like that are really not that little. The things that your customer are going to notice. And so you want to make sure that you pay attention to those things as well. I spoke a little bit about doing, making changes and going through iterations. Well, as you're doing that, you want to make sure that you keep the old versions so you have a record of it and keep track of what you had changed, but make sure nothing else that you didn't ask to be changed is changed. And if it is, make sure that that thing that changed is still okay with you, especially if it's been a while since, they did maybe version 1 to version 2 or version 2 to version 3. They may not necessarily always reference or start off with the previous version. They may just create something from scratch, depending on what's easier for them and what's less time consuming. So you want to make sure that there's consistency across all of your pages. And then the truth is sometimes you're going to go back and forth and back and forth. You need to just decide when's enough. When is enough? When have I gone through too many iterations? Am I just getting into the weeds? Am I trying to make it perfect? Because we talked before about how sometimes done is better than perfect. Am I just trying to make it perfect? Or are there things that are still wrong with the book, still wrong with the illustrations, but it's been 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, whatever. You need to figure out and set yourself a timeline early on when you need this book done and stick to that. And if things are taking longer, ask yourself, is it worth it? Is the time I'm wasting or the time I'm spending, is it worth it? Maybe your illustrator's just not getting it. Maybe they're just not getting your vision, or maybe the issues are more just obvious. Like I said, sometimes the shoes are on, sometimes the shoes are off. These are things that should not get past, in my opinion, an artist's, before they submit it, they should look for consistency, And so you want to make sure that you just set realistic expectations for yourself as well and say, when is enough? And decide, is the book something that you can be proud of and publish? Do you need to just cut ties with that illustrator? Ask for, if you've sent in advance or whatever, ask for some money back depending on how much time and effort has been put into it. Obviously still paying them for the time that they did put into it. Just because you're not happy with it doesn't necessarily mean that their time wasn't well spent. And so they should be paid accordingly. But again, if they're just not getting it, if it's just not working out, then maybe you just need to cut ties. Maybe you just need to find another illustrator. Unfortunately, sometimes financially, that's not an option. Sometimes time-wise, that's not an option. So then what do you do? What do you do if your book is still not perfect? There are still blatant issues that just drive you nuts. You don't want to start all over with a new illustrator. You've already spent quite a bit of money on the illustrator you have used, and it's clear they're just not getting it, that they're just not, they're just as frustrated as you are. And it could be a communication difference, if they're in a different part of the world. Here's what I'm doing, because this exact same thing is what's happened in my newest book. The illustrations are amazing. They're gorgeous. Little things like shoe colors and stuff, or shoe changes and socks and shoes and all that, that's all been fixed. But there's still issues, still blatant issues. It's clear it's not going to go any further. It's clear it's not going to get any better. You need to just cut ties. It's been a nice run. I'll pay you for the work you've done. And what do you do with that? Do you feel comfortable putting out something that you know is not perfect? I typically don't, but here's what I'm doing. I'm actually taking one step extra than I normally would do. I'm adding an additional page into my book, and I'm asking readers, I'm encouraging them when they're done with the book to see if they can find differences, see if they can find inconsistencies in the book. So instead of it being something that would be a negative review, this person's shoes were on in this picture and off in this picture or whatever, almost making it like another game, like a hidden gems game, where you would find the little things that are missing or the things that are different between page 1 and page 7, whatever. So turning it into a game instead of making it something that could be a negative review. So that's what I'm doing in my book that's coming out probably next month. And so when I launch that book, I'll probably do a brief video, maybe a little short, where I show you the book and I show you what the differences are. Maybe I won't show you. Maybe I'll see if you can find the differences too. And so this is something that I hope gives you, some information, if you've never dealt with an illustrator before, or maybe you have and it's been nothing but bad things. I want you to know you're not alone. Bad things happen, and so it really comes down to, one, working with that. And two, at some point you need to just say, enough is enough. Yes, it's not perfect. How can I make those imperfections a positive for my book? So again, I hope you found this helpful. If you did, please, if you haven't already, hit that thumbs up button. It lets YouTube know to share this with more people. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel and click that bell notification so you get alerted every time I put out new videos just like this one. And if you are interested in dealing with an illustrator, I have an entire series right here where I will show you how I use illustrators, whether they're from Fiverr or other ways, how I test them out and really figure out who would be best for my particular book. So you really want to check that series out. But if you've already checked out that series, YouTube says that this video right here has got your name written all over it. I'll catch you inside one of these videos, and remember to write right.